What's going on, people? NGS back at it with another video, and this bad boy right here, this is the Xbox Series X. Now, full disclosure before we dive deeper into this video, I want to give a huge shout out to everybody over at Microsoft for sending out the Xbox Series X for us to check out here on the channel. So thank you so much to everybody at Team Xbox for the opportunity. This is... You know, I think I have better words for this. What else to say, but this is a fucking moment, y'all. In addition to that little disclaimer, I do want to stress the fact that while this is my first impressions of using the Xbox Series X, it is not my final impressions on the console. There is still a lot more stuff I have to say on the Xbox Series X, but given this amazing world of product review that we live in, I am still under embargo to an extent. So while I can speak a lot about this console and my experience playing a lot of games, there are still a couple of things that I unfortunately am not able to reveal to y'all today. However, my full final impressions on using the device will go live closer to the launch of the system when all those other embargoes do lift. So if I didn't cover it here in this video, you can expect me to talk about it leading into the launch of the system. And the last bit of housekeeping before we dive into the impressions, you will not be seeing any type of Xbox Series X gameplay throughout the course of this video. At least not anything that I've personally recorded, considering I do not have access to a 4K capable captured device. So if I really wanted to go out there and show y'all side-by-side comparisons of how this game looks on the vanilla Xbox One versus the Xbox Series X, I am not capable of doing that. And if I'm just being 100% honest, I want to leave those type of videos to the professionals, folks like Digital Foundry, who already do an amazing job at that stuff. So yeah, if you want to check out the nitty-gritty side-by-side detail comparisons about how this texture that's 1,000 feet out is rendered at 1440p versus full 4K, by all means, check those guys out. And with all those mandatory health warnings out of the way, let's talk about my time using the Xbox Series X. So we might as well just start with the design of the console since I've got it placed here on the desk. This generation in particular, the design of both consoles has been a major point of contention to people. I say a major point of contention to people because, well, it's the internet. Everybody's going to complain about things, and apparently the smallest minute detail is actually a deal breaker in why people don't want to buy the console. It's gotten really ridiculous, people. I'm talking folks canceling their pre-orders because they have to screw on a stand. That's crazy. But by comparison to the PlayStation 5, I definitely do prefer the design aesthetic of the Xbox Series X. It is more of an evolution rather than a revolution, and you're going to hear that phrase thrown out in this video a bunch of times because I think that's what Microsoft has essentially gone for. This device is not too dissimilar in terms of build quality to the Xbox One X, except the fact that it is much thicker by comparison to that console. But putting it in my entertainment setup was not a hassle whatsoever. It's got a really good footprint. And in general, I'm not the biggest sticklers when it comes to console designs. Provided the system is competently made, provided the system doesn't burn my house down, and especially the key factor, provided this system is whisper quiet, you got me as a customer. Big emphasis on that whisper quiet point, which we will touch on later. Now, while I really do like the design, there is one major nitpick, which I'm sure many of y'all have picked up, especially if you saw the last video, and if you're watching this video, you can definitely see it on camera. The Xbox Series X is a little bit of a fingerprint magnet, and I say a little bit of a fingerprint magnet because it's kind of strange. The only time I really ever notice the amount of fingerprints that this thing attracts is when it's under direct bright light, like I am right now recording this video with 3 lights shining on me. But if I'm looking at this console in my entertainment setup, regardless of the time of day, I don't notice the fingerprints. Even right now, as I'm looking at the console, I see some, but it's just, again, not a major deal breaker and not something I look for when I am buying a console that stays stationary in an entertainment setup. Because, like I mentioned earlier in the video, provided this thing is competently built, it won't burn my house down, and it is whisper quiet, you got me as a customer. And you know what? Just because I said it twice in less than 3 minutes, we might as well address the console's sound. Or in this case, the lack of sound that this product outputs, which is honestly kind of concerning, but not in the way that you would expect. The Xbox Series X is probably going to go down as one of the most quiet modern consoles I have ever used, period. Especially by direct comparison to its predecessor, the Xbox One X, which used to be the most quiet console in my entertainment setup. Now, that title goes to the Xbox Series X. Now, I am no type of design wizard whatsoever. I don't know what type of wizardry voodoo Microsoft had to pull off to get this much power crammed in a device that has such a tiny footprint, and it also is whisper quiet. Like, that's just absolutely asinine. But you know what? Shout out to everybody at Team Xbox, the design team. If y'all are watching this video, thank you. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. As a recovering PlayStation 4 fan user, thank you. Because this console literally makes little to no noise. It doesn't matter if I'm running a game like Gears of War 5, which was one of the most graphically intensive games on the Xbox One. Even my Xbox One X, which stays whisper quiet the vast majority of the time, you can hear the fans starting to kick up. This bad boy right here, bro, nothing, at least nothing noticeable, nothing. So if Microsoft was able to take the technology they used from the One X and transfer that into the Xbox Series X, that is phenomenal, but time will tell as we use these consoles for years on end, as we start getting more demanding games than Gears of War 5, which, while it is optimized for the Xbox Series X, it is still a last generation game. So once we see games like Gears of War 6 or whatever next gen game is coming out within like the next year or so, we'll see if these consoles really do remain whisper quiet. But as of now, pretty damn good job. And the last point we're going to talk about as far as the design of the console is concerned is going to be one that a lot of people online have been running with for the past couple of weeks: the amount of heat that is dissipated from the Xbox console. A few weeks back, there was a person online who claimed that the Xbox Series X, the heat that it output, it was hot. Scalding hot, so much to the point where you could cancel your heating bill for this winter, buy a Series X, and you are good, bro. And while that rumor was dispelled by many people out there, folks who had the Xbox console in the preview program, I am here to confirm that yes, the Xbox Series X does indeed output heat from the top of the unit, but the heat itself is no different by comparison to any tech product that I have ever used, whether that's the Xbox One X, the PlayStation 4 Pro, my gaming PC, my phone. If a console is doing something demanding, of course it is going to output heat. That's just how things go. So maybe to you, it might seem like it's really hot, but it's no different by comparison. I left my hand hovering over this console as I was playing Gears of War 5, and it didn't output any more heat by comparison to any other console I've used before. So yes, I am here to report that the Xbox Series X does not have an overheating problem. Again, at launch, time will tell for both of these systems as we get further on in the generation if they do have heating issues. But right now, it's all good, bro. And again, I refuse to believe that Microsoft, the company that literally spent over $1 billion trying to save face with the red ring of death, I refuse to believe that those people are so obtuse to launch another system that has red ring of death like tendencies. I can't see it, bro. I just really can't. But then again, Nintendo launches a console that doesn't even have a messaging system, so anything's possible at this point. So that covers everything I wanted to say as far as the overall design of the console. I really do like the aesthetics. Now let's move into something else that you get in the box, which for a lot of people might be as important as the console itself. I'm of course referring to the new controller, or as a lot of people online have dubbed it, the Xbox One controller, but now with an added share button 7 years later. And to be honest, I can see where a lot of people are drawing that comparison, because if you look at the side-by-side of the brand new controller by comparison to its predecessor, there are definite similarities. But like I mentioned earlier, Microsoft has been going for more of a evolution rather than a revolution when it comes down to design. And that philosophy exists with the controller. And hey, that old saying is true. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And Microsoft subscribes to that philosophy to a T. But to be honest, I think it works out well in their favor, given that I am a person who really does prefer the Xbox layout, especially by comparison to the DualShock controllers. I think that Microsoft really nailed the design back in 2005, and ever since then, they've been making subtle tweaks on it. Of course, you know, there were a couple of missteps with the OG Xbox controller they put out for the One, but they ended up rectifying it when they launched the Slim model and then the Elite V2. So this controller right here is just another evolution in that line of controllers. But that does not mean that the controller itself is without its improvements, which there are a lot of them. They're more subtle. Of course, they're not like big game-changing features like the DualSense's haptic feedback and all the crazy things that they've put into that controller. But the stuff that they have gone back and addressed is something I think that a lot of gamers will appreciate over time. So starting with the front of the controller, of course, you've got the brand new share button. That is something that a lot of people, myself included, have wanted Microsoft to do. Why they didn't launch a new controller mid-generation that had a share button is beyond me, but hey, it's nice that it's there. It functions basically the same as it does on PlayStation. You press the button, it takes a screenshot. You hold down the button, it takes a video, and then you double tap and it takes you to your capture section. They've also gone ahead and added a brand new D-pad, and I gotta say, this is definitely the best D-pad that has ever been included on an Xbox controller that isn't the $200 Elite controller. And unlike previous iterations of the Xbox D-pad, I didn't have any problem pressing a button in a direction and it not igniting. That was a major point of contention for me on the Xbox 360, and they've been addressing it as time has gone on. So thankfully, this controller launched and it has a functioning D-pad. The home button as well has received some type of revision. On the previous Xbox One controller, for whatever reason, there were so many times where I clicked the home button and it would not ignite. And if I didn't make a conscious effort to actually press my finger in to press the home button, it wouldn't fire. This controller right here, similar to the Elite V2, all you have to do is lightly tap it and it registers. Now let's talk about the analog sticks on the new controller. Now, one of my major points of contention when it came down to using the Xbox One controller is that for whatever reason, the material that they used on the controller, this little Forza Motorsport tire thing they got going on, it had a tendency to really dig into my skin. It was kind of uncomfortable. And if you had this controller in your hand for multiple play sessions, the controller itself, because it digs into your finger, it picks up dead skin. Thankfully, this controller does not do that, at least not to the extent in the 30 plus hours I've been testing the console. Because it seemed like no matter how many hours I put into my OG Xbox controller, I always found myself going into the bathroom, getting a Q-tip, and fine cleaning these analog sticks because they just pick up everything. Now, the analog sticks themselves still have that really weird, loose feeling to it. I mean, it's a little tighter by comparison to the OG Xbox One controller, but it's still nothing by comparison to what you got with the Elite controller, which gives you customizable analog stick tension, so you can make it mimic the Xbox 360 controller. This one is a little bit better by comparison, but still, I would have liked for more tension with the controller. Now moving into the back of the controller, as you can see on the grips right here, there's this weird texture to them. This is something that Microsoft actually incorporated with the Elite series of controllers. Microsoft has included this texture on the grips, the bumpers, in addition to the triggers. While it might seem minuscule to some people, the added texture for the controller makes it a lot more comfortable to hold in the hand, and it makes it less slippery for those longer gaming sessions. They've also gone back and revised both the bumpers and triggers for the controller. They feel a lot more clicky, and the triggers do not dig into your fingers. They're not as sharp by comparison to the OG Xbox controller. And of course, it wouldn't be an Xbox controller without a removable battery back, which I know is a major point of contention for a lot of people. Folks don't understand how this trillion-dollar corporation is still launching a controller with batteries in 2020. Now, if I had to take a gamble on why Microsoft is launching a new controller in 2020 that still requires AA batteries, I think it has to do with their whole philosophy of providing options for the consumer, as strange as that sounds. But hear me out. So if you have a controller like Xbox that requires AA batteries, the only thing you realistically have to worry about outside of you and your overall comfort with the controller, you with the analog sticks, triggers, yada, 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 is going to be the battery life of the controller. And where Xbox succeeds in that situation is that all you have to do is swap out a battery pack and you're good. You still get the same amount of battery life out of the controller. Whereas the DualShock 4, on the other hand, the one that was included with my PlayStation 4 console that I got close to 7 years ago, that battery only lasts about 4 hours by comparison to the 10 that I got when I owned the system at launch. Compare and contrast that to my Xbox 360 controller, which I've owned for well over 12 years now. That controller right there still holds the exact same amount of charge as it was when I got it over 12 years ago. Which is why I think Microsoft was smart to include options with their controller. So let's say, for example, you do want to be that person that uses AA batteries. Once they die, you swap them out, you still get your 30 hours of charge. Or you can be one of those people that buys the rechargeable battery pack. Or you can be one of those people who uses it wired. Hey, if that's your whole thing, you can do that. But the constant that remains is the fact that the controller itself is a shell. You don't have to worry about the fact that a rechargeable battery will lose its life with time. Don't have to worry about that. In addition to that, Microsoft has made the new controller both backwards and forwards compatible. So if you were one of those people out there who is waiting on the Series X, but you want to test out the new controller, all you got to do is go out there and buy the controller, and it will work just fine with your Xbox One console, with your PC, with your mobile phone. And you also do get to take advantage of all the new technology that they've included with their controllers. So the lower latency, all that great stuff that you get from it, that stuff is included with your controllers. And if you're one of those people out there who cannot part with their badass Xbox Elite controller, fear not, because this controller, you can take it with you to the new console, and you can also take advantage of all the new updates that they've included, which reduce latency, all that great stuff, man. Xbox has got you covered. So wrapping up my thoughts on the controller itself, I definitely do like it. It's a little bit more heftier by comparison to the Xbox One controller, so it feels a little more premium, which is so weird to say in the era of $200 Xbox Elite controllers, that a $70 one has a premium feeling. But also, we got to factor in that these controllers are now starting at $70, and they can go upwards of like $80, $90, depending on the custom design that you do get. It's just a really solid modern controller. They've included the USB Type-C. They've went ahead and they've shaved down more of the bulkier aspects from the OG Xbox One controller, so it feels more ergonomic in your hands. All that stuff, all the little tiny details, while they might not make it a next-gen leap, it definitely makes it more comfortable when you're playing next-gen games. When I come in the arena.